Hi, guys. Welcome back to another Chats from the Blog Cabin. Today, I'm joined by co-authors Shelly Buck and Kathy Curtis. And guys, why don't you introduce yourself first? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Go ahead,
Shell.
All right. Well, my name is Shelly Buck. I'm the mother of three boys, a storyteller and an artist. My jewelry is behind me. I live in LA. I moved from the Midwest to follow my dreams to work at Disney. And that's where I met my husband and we started our family.
And I'm Kathy Curtis, and I'm Shelly's best friend. We met when we were 12 in Schaumburg, Illinois, where my family moved for a short period of time. And so Shelly went west to follow her dreams, and I went into corporate life and moved around the country doing writing and marketing and all those kind of storytelling things. And I also have a sideline or had a sideline gig for about 30 years where I offered programs to people that were going through cancer or illnesses of any kind or domestic abuse. I mean, you name it, leading them through creativity programs, and ultimately ended up writing a book about grief because of the loss of my mom, and developed a writing program related to that I've been offering live and online. And so, yeah, that's who I am.
Well, the book really hit me because my background is my sister was 25 years ago. She was 27 years old, died of cancer. And so she was like my best friend growing up. And I was actually pregnant with my very first daughter when she died of cancer.
Oh, yeah.
And then my dad in 2015, 2014, was diagnosed with simple lymphatic leukemia because of exposure to Agent Orange in Vietnam, and we lost him in 2015. So cancer hits home everywhere. So I think this book is an amazing book. So how did you guys team up to write it? You already said you're best friends, but how did you team up to actually decide to write it together?
Well, I like your version of the story, Kathy. You go.
Well, it's a moment I know and I'll never forget, because Shelly had written a journal all the way through. Her son had cancer, and then he beat it, but then he was in a tragic accident. And so through the grief, she just wrote a journal on Caring Bridge, and she's a very good writer. And so she printed all that off and showed it to a few people, and a man who has interest in it from a film point of view said to her, you know, you really need to take this journal and turn it into more of a narrative. And so I think you need to hire a ghostwriter who can help you do that. And she called me, flipped out, thinking, oh my God, I don't know where to go to find a ghostwriter. What am I? And I'm sitting on the other end of the phone thinking, well, you know, I've written a book and I know your family and I know your story, and I'm thinking maybe it should be me, but I didn't really want to say anything. But I finally did, and she screamed again and said, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't see it. It was sitting right in front of me. So that's how we came to write the book together.
And I love how you credit your son, Shelly, as a co-author as well. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Ryder did a lot of writing, and through his life, he was a very good writer, and we included as much of that as we could in the book. But Ryder really was a spirit guide on this book, if you will. He was available and present throughout the process, and so much of it was written while he was still with us, while he was going through the cancer, that his input was implicit, shall we say. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, Ryder posthumously came to me and said, write my story, Mom. And so I knew that the journal had to turn into a book. There was no two ways about it. It was just going to have to happen.
So how long did it take you from the point that you started writing your journals to when you published the book? How long was that?
Well, the journal happened, Ryder's Ryder passed 7 years ago, and the journal happened a year before that. So it's been 8 years from its inception as a journal to I wrote for a good 5 years on Caringbridge. After Ryder passed, I was continuing to process my grief and my life and his life. And so Kathy and I started working together on it about 2 years ago.
And what was that process like? Because you're not in the same city, are you?
No, I'm in LA. Kathy's in Fort Wayne,
in Indiana. Yeah, we truthfully, that's a really amazing part of the journey, because we were on the phone every single day, multiple times a day, after years of always being really in touch with one another, but not having nearly that level of contact. And so we're, you know, when you enter into a project like that, you have no idea, when you're doing a creative thing, how the other partner will be, like what it will really be like to work with them. We have had a magical run. I mean, it's everything that we had to do, we agreed upon. Like if she thought one way and I thought the other, we'd talk it through, and one of us would be the right one, and we would both know it. So it was really a magnificent journey through our friendship, in addition to the outcome being a book that we're both really proud of.
So what did your families think about it when you said you were going to write this book?
Well, it was their idea long before it was my idea. Just from the people that saw my Caringbridge site, and it's a closed site, so you invite the people you want to share it with. And it made sense while Ryder was going through cancer that we would keep people up to date on a daily basis. Those people and my family all said, you really need to write a book, Shell. This is good stuff. And so when we really got down to it, they were all behind it. They were, they thought it was long overdue. So lots of support.
Wow. And what about you, Kathy? What did your family think when you started writing this book with Shelley?
I don't know that they had any particular thought. I write books for other people. I mean, that's part of what I do. And I think they were, intrigued to see what would happen and what would come out of it. And I think they've all been completely blown away by it. So, yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about Ryder now. Let's tell us his story, because he seems larger than life in the book.
Well, he always has been. Ever since he was a little boy, and this is in the book, he was what I would consider an old soul. He was quiet, introspective, intuitive, observant, very discerning in the friends that he chose, and poetic in the way he expressed himself. It stopped me in my tracks. And when he got into high school and played water polo, he went on to pick up the guitar, which became his true artistic outlet. That was where he fed his soul. So he became a singer-songwriter with his own band, played all over the LA area, Southern California, and went on to record some of his songs. We have them on some CDs. He was a larger-than-life character. He followed his dreams with a passion and really didn't let anything get in his way. Even the cancer was daunting, but it didn't stop him. He made his way through that on his own terms. He followed the doctor's orders, but he did it his way.
I love that. Follow the doctor's orders, but did it his way. I'm at the part of the book where, you know, the doctor's telling him he needs to rest, and he's like not out resting. He's out going and going and staying out all night. Basically, you're worried as a mom, but you're letting him do his own thing. So how hard was that to let him do his own thing?
Oh, that was so hard. Of course, I was, you know, the epitome of a helicopter mom during his cancer treatment. I had to be there. I felt I had to be there. He didn't really want to hear what the doctors had to say. He wanted me to gather the information. So I was at the hospital every day for 8 to 10 hours a day until my husband could come in the evening and spend a couple of hours with him. And, you know, I gathered all the information from the doctors, and you know, I got that Ryder needed to be careful. But when he would come home, he was inpatient for 1 week and would be out for 2. So after a couple of days of being home and feeling lousy, he was off and running. And I knew I had to lengthen the leash, so to speak, or even drop the leash. I mean, he said he was going camping a couple of hours away, and he came home with pictures of the Golden Gate Bridge on his phone, which is about 6 hours north of where we live. He was doing it the way he felt like doing it. He went surfing, he went rock climbing, he came home all scraped up. And, you know, the doctors were appalled and really tried to reel him in a little bit. But, you know, he was looking at his own mortality. He was thinking, I've got so much time. I don't know how much. Mm-hmm. What am I going to do with it? I'm going to do what I love. I'm going to hike. I'm going to surf. I'm going to play my guitar on the mountaintop, go to concerts and ball games and all sorts of places I wouldn't have had him go. But as a mother, the first doctor I talked to gave me the best advice. He said, you're going to have to let him be a man. He was 22 when he was diagnosed, and he was a man, though he was still living at home because he was a student. That was a tall order. I had to really, really work at letting him lead and stepping back into the background and just being there in the bleacher seats, waiting for him to need something.
So what advice would you give parents that are going through similar situations like that right now?
Well, I tried to identify a little bit with Ryder while he was in the hospital, and I watched as they poked him and hovered over him and rolled him off for tests. And I realized that he was being done to all the time, and he had no control over it, and he needed control in some way. And it doesn't matter if it's a 5-year-old or a 22-year-old or a 30-year-old. They're going to need to feel some sort of semblance of being in the driver's seat, where they can control what they eat or what toys they play with, mm-hmm. or what they do with the time where they feel well. So giving them some kind of control was really, really important. It became the theme for the whole cancer journey.
So how did it affect your family unit?
Well, I was gone most of the time. My mother and my sister took turns watching over my youngest son, who was still home. He was in high school. And my middle son was away at college. So we stayed in touch via phone and texting and so on. But really, I dropped the ball at home a lot. We had wonderful, wonderful community. Our friends brought us meals from the time Ryder was diagnosed until after he finished his cancer treatment. And then again, after he passed, we received meals, and I counted on that. I had friends, choir directors, theater directors who kept a watch on my youngest son. The coach, the water polo coach, watched out for him. I just relied heavily on my community. My husband was working overtime on Frozen at the time, so he was not to be seen. We were like ships passing in the night. I barely saw him.
So I guess I know as a mom, and Kathy, are you a mom as well?
I'm not.
Oh,
No.
okay. But I was thinking mom guilt when you're focusing on that one child that's sick, because I have 3 daughters.
Right.
And so when you're focusing on the one child sick, the other two kind of, feel left out a little bit. So how did they react to all this stuff going on?
Well, my youngest son was the one who was most present. And he acted out. He was 14 years old, and he was very demanding. I tried to be there for his games. I tried to be there for his performances. I was there for the big things, but the day-to-day, I remember one time he was going to a prom, and I was, probably it was an off week from the hospital. So I was home, and he absolutely had to have a gold lame bow tie. Now, where I was going to come up with it, and then I had hours to get this. This wasn't like, give me a week and I'll make one. I ran up to the top of the street, and the store there just happened to have one, and I came up with it like magic. But he wasn't, Mommy, can you please? It was, Mom, I need a bow tie, gold lame bow tie now. So that was what I dealt with him. He was very happy about the meals that came to the house. It was like we were getting takeout every night. So I really didn't worry about feeding him or my husband. And I was just as present as I could be when Ryder was not in the hospital. And those weeks when he was in, my mother and my sister stepped in and took care of my youngest son. And then again, my middle son was away at college. So we did make trips to see his productions. He was in Michigan. So, it just happened to dovetail with weeks when Ryder was not inpatient. Because I don't know what I would have done if it had coincided. It would have been a really tough decision.
Yeah, I can just imagine. I mean, my oldest right now is in California. She's going to graduate school out there, and I'm in North Carolina. So that being drawn away, it's kind of hard.
Yeah. I was spread thin.
So what did you guys learn while you were writing this book? What was your most thing that stood out the most in your mind while writing? What did you know that you had to put in the book?
Well, pardon me. Early on, Shelley wrote like a day-by-day accounting of what had happened. And when it came to putting everything into a book, we really believed that the key thing that needed to come forward was this idea of the way that Ryder lived his life and the way that he was in the world, and the thing that got him through the cancer and took him soaring into his life after he, beat the cancer and went on, was this light. And he had written this song. The very first song he ever wrote is called Leave Your Light On. And that was sort of, truly his mantra for living life. And when they had the memorial service, right after he passed, they were thinking that there might be 300 people come to the church, and they were planning for an overflow room to accommodate people and with video screens, because they had videos and they had all kinds of things they were going to do. But 1,200 people showed up, and they stayed for 3 hours, and they lingered, and they wrote out little cards telling Shelley and the family what Ryder had meant to them. And so out of all that feedback, the idea that his light, that this is what it meant. This was the imprint that he had left in his life. And it was really out of the ordinary for a young man to be that full of wisdom and joy and just all the things that he was. And he wasn't perfect, but he just, lit up a room. And so when we were writing the book, that light guided our everyday. The light, we would tune into that. I would like felt Ryder right on my shoulder, like tuning in and just really absorbing what that meant over and over and over, day by day. And so by the time we were done, I think we both have way more light in us than we had before. I have to believe that.
I love that. Now, you talked about the little cards. Was that some of the excerpts that are in the book? Were they from the little cards or no?
Yes.
Go ahead, Shell.
That's okay. We got text messages, but those cards were golden. They were beautiful stories. They were heartfelt, and we felt that they really had a place in the book. That Chris and I said to one another, we didn't really know Ryder. I mean, we maybe knew about 25% of him because all we saw was what was in the house. It was when he was out in the world that he was doing all this good work and affecting people deeply. And we found that out after he passed. So yes, we thought those stories really deserved a place in the book because they illustrate who Ryder really was.
Now, did you initiate the note cards, or did the people just leave them?
Oh no, we left them out. They had they had a little request at the top and a picture of Ryder, and we left them in the lobby of the narthex of the church.
Okay, that is so cool that you can go back and look at that now too. That's nobody in their grief. Nobody really thinks the forethought of actually doing something like that, so you can know what they've meant to other people.
Yeah, I don't know how we came up with it. I had a lot of friends help me with the service, and it's a blur to me, but I do know that we definitely planned the music that would be played. His band played, of course, and we had a guest band that showed up that was Ryder's favorite band. They were a big band, Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros, and some of the members of the band showed up and played at the church with Ryder's band, and really made it a spectacular, special day.
Well, I can't even. I've got goosebumps just listening to this. So how has your family changed in the years that's passed?
Well, I would say before Ryder passed, I was exuberant and optimistic and joyful and kind of like Tigger. And as soon as he passed, it was more like I was Eeyore. There was this sadness, this blanket, this heavy blanket of sadness over me. And as goes the mother, so goes the family. So as I worked my way back into the light and into my optimism, the family has grown and processed and come together to kind of fill the physical gap and yet keep space for Ryder's presence. We just have found a different way to hold him. And we still talk about him. There are pictures all over the house. I have a revolving frame on my kitchen counter that has pictures of everybody, but lots and lots of pictures of Ryder. And so they're talking points, they're conversation starters. And we do a lot of remembering. And I focus heavily on my two sons that are present with me on Earth. And we've just come together tighter.
Now,
yeah.
Kathy, how has it affected you? Because obviously you're her best friend. So how have you seen, not only affected you, but how have you seen her change and evolve through all this?
Well, it did affect me. And, working on the book, I mean, I was processing my own grief too about Ryder. But, for a long time, I worried about Shelley because I know that early on, she did not want to live. She admitted that. I felt that when we talked. But I also knew her to be stubborn and she had a will that was undeniable. And that will would have said to her, and it did, it's not acceptable. Not only that, she had 2 other boys that needed her, but still, that's a very dark place and a very, very dark time. So during the course of writing, we processed a lot of grief, together. But one of the things that I'll never forget that I think served a role, but at the time it was very painful, is that she had this massive collection of memories that had happened. And in order to create a book that would be, truthful to what happened, but yet light enough to bring people through it, not to just pull them down, we had to pull out a lot of different things. And every time I would say to her, I think we really need to pull this out, her heels would dig in because she is stubborn. And I could feel it. She didn't even have to say a word. I could feel the heels. And I would feel, it got to the point where I would feel that pain before I made her feel the pain of having to let go. But in the end, I really feel like it helped clear some of the remaining grief because of that continual letting go of what felt like sacred pieces of the story that in fact they were memories, but they didn't need to be put out there into the world. Anyway, I don't know if I'm explaining it well, but I was overwhelmed by that. But what I can tell you is that Shelley is the Shelley I've known forever again, but more, better, deeper, richer. Yeah.
So more like Shelley that appreciates life a little bit. Like
I think that's exactly right. Yes, exactly right. Yeah.
Wow. So you started a scholarship foundation in Ryder's name. Tell us about that.
That was, we announced that at his service. So that came into being the first week. It's a scholarship for seniors at his high school who want to study music. They don't have to major in it, but they do have to have a plan for sharing it with the world the way Ryder did. And so we audition them, we interview them, they fill out a pretty lengthy application with the opportunity to write some thought-provoking essays. And then at the end of every school year, we present however many scholarships that year. It just depends on who applies and qualifications. So that's the scholarship. There are other things. Did you want me to tell you about anything?
Yeah, go right ahead. Tell me about the other things you've done to let his memory live.
All right. The next thing we did was we installed a bench at the top of his favorite mountain, at the end of his favorite hiking trail, where he would go and play his guitar or flirt with the girls or just hike up there to meditate and be one with the stars. And that's a beautiful place that a lot of people go. We'll often hike up there and find other people resting on it. And so that's very gratifying. We did produce 3 CDs of his music. So we have that, and that is just a beautiful gift to ourselves. I listen to it all the time when I'm in my car. And there's a school in Bali where he went his last summer, and he taught English there for a while. He was there for a month, and he wanted to go back and continue doing that. But he passed first, and they have set up a Ryder Buck English language program in 3 schools now. They just opened their 3rd school in Bali. So those things live on. And of course, we wrote the book, and that is pretty much the cherry on top of it all.
Wow, you've done so many things to immortalize his memory. I mean, to make him larger. It sounded like he was larger than life anyways, but now you're making him even larger than life. So have you ever had the opportunity, like when you go up to the mountain and you see somebody sitting there, to share with them who Ryder was, what the book was about?
Sure. There was, for 6 years, there was a picture of him printed on a tile up there. Someone recently removed it, and we tried replacing it, and they removed that one. So we figured 6 years was a good run. So yes, when we would be sitting up there and people would come up either on their bikes or hiking, they would say, "Do you know anything about this young man?" And so we tell the story and share his music site. And then we have friends who go up there kind of religiously, to spend time thinking about Ryder and being with him. And we go up there pretty frequently. So, yeah.
Well, your story about the bench and where he's at the mountain reminds me of another book that I read. I can't remember the name of it, but it's by Phil Mazier. And I actually interviewed him in the beginning of the year. And he wrote a book about going and doing all these hiking trails that his daughter had always said it was on their bucket list. And because his daughter died of Addington's disease. And so he was her best friend, they were best friends to each other. And so he, 71 years old, went up and did all these trails that were on her bucket list in her memory and ended up writing a book about that. So your story sounds so similar the way you immortalized him. I love that. I love how you're still keeping him alive through this book.
Thank you. That's the point.
Yeah.
So, wow. I'm just like flustered right now.
Well, if I could, I want to kind of dovetail on what you were talking about with the other author. There's so much healing power in doing things that come out of the relationship you had. Like in the book that I wrote, my mom and I wrote letters to one another, not email, but like real letters over a long period of time before she died. And so my natural way of healing my grief was to write to her and then allow her to write back. And that was a real spirit shifting, grief eliminating way for me to do it. But I really think that there's some way that you can further just a unique aspect of your relationship with someone and keep it going and let it become like the energy of that person and of you together, bringing it forward. I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, that book was really changed. And once I read this one and I was like, cancer, as soon as I saw cancer, I was like, that hits so close to home, especially losing my sister. Like I said, my oldest is actually, her middle name is named after her. So, but just, I can't imagine writing a book about it. So why, I know these emotions were all coming up for you when you were writing it. Was there stuff that you were like, I can't do this anymore? Was there ever a point when you were writing, especially you, Shelley? Because I know, Kathy, you were ghost writing, but Shelley, all the emotions brought back. Was there a point where you said, I can't do this anymore, I'm going to stop?
Oh, no. I was propelled forward, not just by the process and the product, but by Ryder. There was no way I could let him down. He asked me to write his story, and I knew what we were doing was good work. It was work that needed to be done. It was a story that I needed to tell, and I think it is a story that's not just personally satisfying, but I think it has value to the world. It's ultimately, though it's about grief and cancer, it's ultimately, I believe, an uplifting, hopeful book that that shines a light on everyone. So.
Now, Kathy, did you ever have misgivings about whether or not you were going to be able to show him the writer that he was in real life in the book?
You mean to show him not being perfect?
Yeah. 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 And to basically say, am I going to do him justice when you're writing the book?
Oh, absolutely. It was, first of all, it was a big honor to get to do this, but it was a huge responsibility. And that's why I think I worked so hard to stay in tune with him. And that, when you write a book, there are a million decisions and choices that you can make. And every one of them, it had to feel like it was, the thing that Ryder would want. He wouldn't want a sad book. He would want a brilliantly lit book. And so I grew really comfortable intuiting his input. And like I said, Shelley and I just seamlessly agreed, all along the way as we were putting it together. So I think he's proud. Yeah, I do.
So what's up next for you guys? Do you plan on writing any other books, or is it just the one and done, or do you think you'll write more?
One and done.
Well, different for both of us. I think I'm one and done, but Kathy may have other opinions and certainly a different life's path.
Well, I have other books that I'm working on, but who knows? We're open to, the way this thing unfolds, and we don't know the future.
Because I would love to hear more about how the family interacted. You already talked about how your sons were having some problems. I would love to hear maybe more of their side of what was going on, so that other people who have siblings that are going through the same thing, they can know that they're not alone and that their feelings are valid. Because a lot of people think, oh, your brother or your sister has cancer, or your brother and sister are dying, you shouldn't be acting up right now. You should be, you let your parents, focus on the person that's sick, but they have their own feelings and thoughts. So,
I think that's a valid idea, really.
Yeah. If I could get it out of them, I would have put it into the book. What I got was what I got. But, they were both very, very different, including my husband. All three of them were very, very different in the way they handled not just the cancer, but Ryder's passing. And that's how I've found it with everyone. Everyone has their own way of seeing life and death, of dealing with the difficulties that come up in life, not just cancer, but any really big challenge that sets you off. And the boys taught me a lot in that I needed to make room for them to be who they are and were at the time, and honor that. And I needed to not have expectations that they were going to follow my lead. They did to some degree, but I think it was as much that they didn't want to see me disintegrate.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we had to make room for each other. My husband, I wanted people around me. I couldn't be alone after Ryder passed, and my husband needed solitude. So he took his bike and the car up the coast for a few days just to get in touch with Ryder. And he took Ryder's favorite bands, music, and listened to them, and just spent the time away. And fortunately, my friends knew what I needed, and they were around me, and I was not alone. And so we went about our processing completely differently.
It's amazing how everybody processes grief so differently, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Truly. And I really admire the way that they have dealt with each other and allowed that to happen, because I know a lot of marriages are really strained by grief, and it's the kind of thing that can pull you apart. And I just have, from the get-go, found them to be totally full of grace and generosity to the other one. Just, do your thing.
Yeah. I know when I lost my sister, and both my one of my older sisters and myself were both pregnant, and we honestly say that if we didn't have the first grandson and granddaughter born that year, that my parents probably would have just completely fallen apart. But the fact that they had something to look forward to and kind of brought the light back into them.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, Shelley, what's up next for you then? What are you going to focus on now that you've written this book? You said no more books, probably, right? So what are you?
Well, I don't know. We'll see if this evolves into something more. I would love to see it as a movie. I believe it's got the value and the chops to reach more people on the big screen. And so I'm really still very focused on Leave Your Light On and promoting it and helping it find a wider audience. I'm got both of my boys in the house now because of COVID. So we are sorting out how we all live together again. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. They're big boys now, 28 and 23. So they need their own space.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're sorting through reorganized family life.
So you said you were thinking about maybe having it hopefully turn into a movie. Who would be the dream person that you would want to play Ryder?
My gosh, to play Ryder.
Oh, good question. Wow.
Oh my gosh. I couldn't begin to come up with a name. My husband would have it off the top of his head. Do you guys have any ideas, Kathy?
No, I not off the top of. I can't believe we haven't thought of this. I haven't.
Yeah.
I haven't thought of it. I mean, I know older actors that are like a little too old to play Ryder now. Leonardo DiCaprio comes to mind for me. I'm not sure why, but I think it would have to be someone younger, and I'm just not as familiar with them.
Yeah.
Great question, though. Wow.
Yeah, that's
something to put in your hand.
You stumped me. If my husband were here, he'd answer you.
So, Kathy, what's up next for you?
Well, I'm going to continue to work with Shelley and help in any way that I can with Leave Your Light On. I'm also, I have the book that I wrote, which is called Invisible Ink, which is the letters that I wrote to my mother and then allowed her to write back to me after her death. That was so unbelievably healing for me that I turned into a writing program that I offer in person and online. But I'm going to do a second edition of the book because I want to put that writing program as the second half of the book so that people who read the story because people tell me it opens them up, it makes them want to engage with their loved one who has passed that they've never really given themselves permission to do. And I think the writing program, since it works so well for me, could be helpful for them. So that's one thing. I have a never-ending list of projects, and I'm just always going. But life tends to. I mean, I think life is a river, and we do best when we allow it to flow and not get in the way of where it's wanting us to go. And right now, I feel more than ever with COVID and all the topsy-turvy kind of things that we're all feeling, that I'm trying harder than ever to allow that river to flow and to not try to control where I go. So, the magic lies ahead.
Wow. Is there anything you guys want to say before we wrap up? Any last thoughts?
Yeah, I would probably, on behalf of Ryder, say everybody has a light. And all that really means is that it's just who you are, what you love, what makes you happy, what choices you make to make room for that so that it can shine up from within you. And that's what he wanted for people. that's what he chose and demanded in his own life. But that's what he wanted for people. And people were drawn to him like a magnet because he didn't try to be who he wasn't. And he was challenging in all the most charming ways. But he he did it it's kind of like Frank Sinatra did. He did it his way. And, you know, we get one life. What are you doing to make it feel significant and rich and happy and all that? So anyway, that's my final thought from him on behalf of him. Yeah.
He said, live and love. We're only here once. And that's on one of his pictures because it's just a quote out of his many meanderings and journalings. And I think that's the most important thing besides leave your light on, which is, you know, find your light and keep it shining and share it with the world. Live and love, you know.
I love that. And the book is Leave Your Light On. It's the musical mantra left behind by a Illuminating Spirit. And I love this book. I'm halfway through it now, and I love it. And just, you can just see it, his light shining through the picture and the back cover. You can just see it.
Yeah. And that was his last gig. That was taken 1 week exactly before he passed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Wow. And I took the picture. It was it was a gig in a neighbor's backyard. And something told me that night not to videotape. I have videotaped every gig that he ever had, but something said, just take still photos. And I swear it was a voice because it was so clear that I actually didn't take my video camera, which I never went to any gigs without my video camera. I just took my good 35 millimeter and I took 2 pictures similar to that one that night. And the rest of the time I just enjoyed the night, and I'm really glad I did.
Wow, that's just giving me goosebumps right there.
Yeah.
Wow. I want to thank you both for coming on and just sharing the story of Ryder.
Thank you for having us. We love talking about him.
Obviously, you can tell the love is shining in your eyes. Even though you're both wearing glasses, you can see the light shining through.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
So